Look, I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking before I even get the words out, but hear me out, just for a minute, before you judge me, before you label me. Sometimes you don't realize what you're missing until it's almost too late to get it back, and sometimes you have to burn your own life down just to see if you can feel the warmth. My name is Alara. I'm 22 years old. And yes, I told my fiancé I wanted my hoe phase and threw my engagement ring at him. But there's so much more to the story. So much more that nobody, not my parents, not my friends, not his family, seems to want to hear. They all look at me like I'm the crazy one. The villain. The girl who had it all and threw it away for nothing. But honestly, I think I just said what every girl in my position thinks but is too terrified to admit. Let me start from the beginning. The real beginning. I'd been with Silas since we were 15. Can you believe that? 7 whole years. With the same guy. We met in middle school, in that awkward phase of braces and bad haircuts. We started dating in high school, a relationship born from shared notes in biology class and nervous hand-holding in the movie theater. Everyone, and I mean everyone, called us the perfect couple. The high school sweethearts who actually made it. His family loved me. His mom, Marion, always said I was the daughter she never had. His dad would clap Silas on the back at family barbecues and say, "You better hold on to this one, son." My parents? They thought he hung the moon. He was stable. He was polite. He was everything their own tumultuous marriage wasn't. We had our whole future mapped out on a blueprint we didn't even draw ourselves. Wedding next summer. A small house with a picket fence a couple of years after that. Kids, eventually. The whole suburban dream. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Nobody talks about what it's like to be someone's first everything when you're that young. How it's not romantic. It's suffocating. Don't get me wrong. Silas was sweet. Really sweet. Maybe. If I'm being brutally honest, he was too sweet. He was one of those guys who would apologize for everything, even when it wasn't his fault. If I came home cranky and exhausted from my retail job, he'd immediately tense up. "What did I do wrong?" he'd ask, his eyes wide with concern. "How can I fix it?" It sounds nice in theory, doesn't it? A man who just wants to make you happy. But after a while, it gets annoying. It gets infuriating when someone has zero backbone. I'd test him sometimes. I'm ashamed to admit it now, but I did. I'd make little, passive-aggressive comments about the shirt he was wearing, or the way he chewed his food a little too loudly. And instead of telling me to back off, to stop being ridiculous, he'd just agree with me. He'd apologize. He'd try to change. Every time, he would fold into whatever shape I wanted him to be. His family was pretty well off compared to mine. Not mega rich or anything, but they were comfortable. House paid off, nice vacations every year. Silas worked in some downtown office doing computer stuff. IT, I think. Nothing too exciting, but it paid well. It was respectable. Me? I was working retail, folding sweaters and dealing with entitled customers all day for minimum wage while he got to sit in an air-conditioned office with a 401k. And maybe that's part of where the resentment started to build. This tiny, ugly seed. He had this easy, predictable life practically handed to him, while I was fighting for every little thing. The worst part, though, was watching my friends live their lives while I felt like mine was already over. My best friend, Piper, would call me on her way home from some crazy night out. She'd tell me about the different guys she was talking to, the spontaneous weekend trips to the coast, the hilarious dating app disasters. And there I was, scrolling through Pinterest, planning a wedding registry, like I was already 40. "Alara, you need to experience life before you settle down," she'd say, half joking. And I'd laugh it off, pretending it didn't sting. But inside, a voice would whisper, "She's right." I was missing out. On everything. All the messy, stupid, fun, heartbreaking things that are supposed to make up your early 20s. I was playing house with someone I'd been with since I was a kid. Silas's mom, Marion, always rubbed me the wrong way too. She'd make these comments about how lucky Silas was to have someone so devoted. But her tone always made it feel like she was really saying I should be grateful he wanted me at all. Like she thought I wasn't quite good enough for her precious, perfect son. His dad, his whole family, they treated me like I was some prize. Silas had won at a carnival. Not my own person with my own dreams, my own desires. The feeling of being trapped really started around the time I turned 20. Suddenly, every family gathering was an interrogation about wedding plans. When are you two setting a date? You know, my cousin's daughter got married at your age. When will we hear the pitter-patter of little feet? They assumed our whole future was set in stone. But I kept thinking, is this really it? Is this boring, predictable, safe life really all I'm ever going to have? Our routine was soul-crushing. Silas would come home from work at 5:30 on the dot. We'd eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed, repeat. Weekends were for grocery shopping and visiting his family, or mine. It felt like we were already married and had been for 20 years. But where was the excitement? Where was the passion? Where was the fire? So I started picking fights, over stupid things. The way he loaded the dishwasher, the boring documentary he wanted to watch instead of going out. Because honestly, fighting was the only time our relationship felt alive anymore. It was the only time I saw a flicker of something other than placid agreement in his eyes. But he never really fought back. He'd just apologize. He'd try to do better next time. And that, somehow, made me even more frustrated. I wanted him to yell, to show some fire, to care enough to defend himself. But he never did. That's when I started noticing other guys more. There was this guy, Kalen, at my work. He was the complete opposite of Silas. Confident, a little cocky, unpredictable. He'd flirt with me, make jokes that were slightly inappropriate but made me laugh anyway. Jokes that Silas would never, ever make. Nothing happened between us. Not then. But having someone look at me like I was exciting, like I was a possibility instead of a certainty, it felt incredible. It felt like a drink of water after years in the desert. I'd mention Kalen when Silas asked about my day, just to see his reaction. He'd get this little worried look in his eyes, his brow would furrow, but he never actually said anything. God, even his jealousy was weak. The breaking point came after months of feeling like the walls were closing in. We were having another one of our stupid fights. This time, it was about how we never did anything fun anymore. And for the first time, Silas had the audacity to turn it around on me. "You've been treating me badly for months, Alara," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm trying my best to make you happy, but it's never enough." That's when something inside me just snapped. Here he was, acting like the victim. The victim? When I was the one stuck in this boring, passionless relationship at 22 years old, with my whole life stretching out in front of me like a long, gray highway. "You know what?" I said, my voice dripping with a venom I didn't know I had. "I feel like I should have taken a break from this years ago. I never got to have my hoe phase in high school or college like everyone else." The words just tumbled out, ugly and sharp and true. I meant every single one. I was tired of pretending to be satisfied with this safe, boring life when there was a whole world of experiences I'd never had. A world I was terrified I'd never get to see. Silas just stood there, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. His face was pale. Then he had the nerve to say, "I need some time to think," before turning to leave for work. Like he was the one who'd been wronged. I was so angry. So full of this righteous fury. I ripped the engagement ring off my finger, the ring his grandmother had given him, and I threw it right at him. "Fine," I screamed. "Think about this." The ring bounced off his chest with a soft thud and rolled under the couch. And for a second, we both just looked at the spot where it disappeared. The silence in the room was deafening. Then, because I'm not actually heartless, a wave of regret washed over me. "Silas, I started, trying to apologize, trying to explain that I was just frustrated, that I didn't mean it the way it sounded. but he was already grabbing his keys and his laptop bag. He walked out the door without another word. I figured we'd talk about it that evening. We'd work things out. We always did. We'd been together for 7 years. One bad fight wasn't going to end everything. Right? While he was gone, I did something stupid. I went over to Kaylin's place. I needed to vent, to talk to someone who would get it. And he did. He was so understanding. He told me Silas didn't deserve me if he couldn't handle my honesty. He made me feel validated, not crazy. We didn't do anything inappropriate that day, but just being around someone who saw my frustration as passion instead of a problem, it was intoxicating. When I got home that evening, expecting Silas to be there, ready to talk, the apartment felt wrong. Empty. At first, I thought he was just working late to avoid me. That seemed like something he'd do. But then I started noticing things. Small things. His phone charger wasn't by the bed. His favorite gray hoodie wasn't slung over the chair where he always left it. His work laptop was gone. That's when the panic started to set in, a cold, creeping dread. This wasn't just him cooling off. He'd actually taken stuff with him. I tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. I texted him. "Where are you? When are you coming home?" Nothing. No response. Part of me, the arrogant part, thought he was just being dramatic. He'd come crawling back once he realized how much he needed me. But another, smaller part was starting to worry that maybe this time I'd pushed him too far. The next day, I was having a strained lunch with my mom when she casually mentioned running into Silas, with his grandmother, Esther, at some diner across town. It was so strange, my mom said, confused. He was there during work hours. And his mom, Marion, mentioned something to your dad about him needing some space to figure things out. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just him being moody. He had actually left. He'd left our apartment and gone to stay with his family. I felt this weird, toxic mix of anger and panic. How dare he? How dare he make me look like the crazy girlfriend by running to his family instead of working things out with me like an adult? And what was he telling them? I tried calling him again. This time, he answered, but his voice, it was cold, distant, a voice I'd never heard from him before. "We need to talk," I said, trying to sound calm. "No," he said, his voice flat. "We really don't. This is over, Alara. Over. Just like that. Over. 7 years. Ended over the phone because of one fight where I was finally honest about how I felt. I was just having a moment. I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. Every girl wonders what she missed out on. It doesn't mean I don't love you. But he wasn't hearing any of it. "I'm done, Alara," he said, and for the first time I heard a tremor of steel in his voice. "I am done being criticized for everything I do. Done walking on eggshells around your moods. Done being with someone who so clearly doesn't want to be with me." Then he delivered the final blow. That comment about wanting a hoe phase, that wasn't just a moment. That was the final confirmation of what I've suspected for months. "You've been mentally checked out of this relationship and treating me like garbage because you resent me. That's not a rough patch, Alara. That's you slowly destroying what we had because you wanted something else." He paused, and I could hear him take a breath. "Well, now you can have it." And then he hung up on me. He actually hung up. Silas. The boy who apologized if the wind blew too hard. He hung up the phone on me like I was some random telemarketer. I called back immediately. Voicemail. I left message after message. Pleading, crying, explaining, raging, telling him that throwing away 7 years over one fight was insane. But he never called back. The next few days were a special kind of hell. I kept expecting him to walk through the door, to realize he was being ridiculous. But his stuff just kept disappearing. His grandmother, Esther, would come by when I was at work and take more of his things. A box of books here. His clothes there. It was like he was erasing himself from my life, piece by piece, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Finally, I drove to his grandmother's house. I had to talk to him face to face. Esther answered the door. This was the same woman who used to hug me tight at every family gathering and slip me $20 at Christmas. Now, she looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "He doesn't want to see you, Alara," she said, her voice firm, blocking the doorway. "Please, Esther," I begged, "just 5 minutes. This is all a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," she said, her eyes sad but unyielding. "That boy has been miserable for months because of how you treat him. We all saw it, but he wouldn't hear a word against you. Now he's finally free, and you want to drag him back into your mess? I don't think so." She closed the door in my face, his own grandmother. That's when the walls came crashing down. Marion called my parents. She told them everything. Suddenly, our private disaster was public knowledge, and everyone had an opinion. My dad was furious with me. "You had a good man who loved you," he yelled. "And you threw it all away because you wanted to sleep around? What is wrong with you?" My friends were split. Piper thought I was brave. But my other friends, they thought I was insane. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was seeing Silas around town. The first time I saw him at that gas station, I expected him to look miserable, heartbroken, like I felt. Instead, he looked lighter. That's the only word for it. Like he'd been carrying something incredibly heavy for a very long time, and he'd finally put it down. He was polite when he saw me. He said hello. But it was the kind of politeness you give a distant acquaintance, not the woman you were supposed to marry. Meanwhile, I was falling apart. I lost weight from the stress. I couldn't sleep. I spent most of my nights crying or staring at my phone, hoping he'd call. And I started to think about all the good times, all the little traditions we had. Had I really thrown all of that away for some stupid, childish fantasy? Kalen from work was being supportive. He told me Silas was an idiot for not fighting for me. He told me I deserved someone who could handle my passion. We started hanging out more, and eventually, things got physical. But it wasn't the exciting, passionate, life-altering experience I had imagined. It felt empty, meaningless, like I was just going through the motions. Afterward, I would lie there in his bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how different it was with Silas. How safe and loved I'd felt. How even our most boring nights together had felt more real, more substantial than this. But I kept seeing Kalen, because I didn't want to admit to myself that maybe, just maybe, I'd made a horrible, irreversible mistake. I told myself I was finally living the life I'd always wanted, even though I felt hollow and lost most of the time. Months passed. Instead of feeling liberated, everything just kept getting worse. Damon, it turned out, was exactly the kind of guy I should have expected him to be. He was seeing other girls the whole time. When I confronted him, he just laughed. "We were never exclusive, Elara," he said with a shrug. "You said you wanted to experience other people. I figured you were doing the same thing." My great, liberating hoe phase consisted of a few meaningless hookups that left me feeling worse about myself each time. I thought I wanted excitement and passion. What I got was a string of guys who saw me as easy entertainment and nothing more. None of them cared about me the way Silas had. Not even close. Meanwhile, I kept hearing updates about Silas through mutual friends, and it was like he was thriving without me. He got a better position at his company. He started taking some certification classes in the evenings. He joined a recreational sports league. People would mention seeing him out with friends, laughing and joking in a way I rarely saw when we were together. It was like removing me from his life had unlocked some version of himself that I'd never even known existed. The real breaking point, the moment my delusion finally shattered, came when I ran into Marion at the grocery store. I'd been avoiding places where I might see his family, but I needed food. She was polite, but cold. The way you'd be to someone you barely knew. "How are you doing, Alara?" she asked, but her eyes said she didn't really want to know. "I'm okay," I lied. "How's How's Silas? Her entire face changed when I said his name. She got this protective, fierce look that I'd never seen directed at me before. He's doing wonderfully, she said, her voice even but sharp. Honestly, better than he has in years. I haven't seen him this happy, this at peace, in so long. It's like he's finally himself again. The words hit me like a physical blow. Happy, at peace, without me. That's good, I managed to stammer. It is good, she said firmly, her gaze unwavering. You know, we all watched him struggle for months, trying so hard to make you happy when nothing he did was ever enough. He blamed himself for your mood swings, for your constant criticism. But now he knows, it wasn't him, it was you. And he's finally free to be the person he actually is, instead of walking on eggshells all the time. She didn't say it meanly, which somehow made it worse. She said it like she was just stating a fact. Like it was obvious to everyone except me that I had been the problem all along. I never meant to make him feel that way, I said, my voice weak. Maybe not, Marian said, her expression softening just a little. But you did. For a long time. And now he's learning what it's like to be with people who actually appreciate him for who he is, instead of constantly trying to change him. She walked away after that, leaving me standing in the cereal aisle, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Was she right? Had I really been that bad to him? Looking back over the last year of our relationship, I could see it. The little criticisms, the sighs of disappointment, the constant dissatisfaction. I thought I was trying to make our relationship better, more exciting. But maybe I was just slowly poisoning something good because I wanted something I couldn't even define. The final wake-up call came about a year after our breakup. I was still living in the same apartment, still working the same retail job, still drifting through meaningless encounters and wondering why nothing felt right anymore. That's when Piper told me. She was so careful, so gentle when she said it. She'd seen Silas at some community event. With a woman she didn't recognize. She seemed really sweet, Piper said, watching my face. They looked, I don't know, Alara, they looked really comfortable together, like they'd been friends for a long time. My heart didn't just break, it sank. It plunged into this cold, dark place in my stomach and just stayed there, after everything. After 7 years. He had moved on. He was building something new with someone else, while I was still stuck in the exact same place, haunted by the wreckage I had made. But you know what? Even after all that, I'm not going to apologize for wanting more out of life. I'm not going to feel guilty for refusing to settle for boring and predictable when I was only 22 years old. Yes, I lost Silas. And yes, that turned out to hurt more than I ever could have imagined. But I'd rather be alone and honest about what I want than trapped in a relationship that was suffocating me. Even if that relationship looked perfect to everyone else. Maybe I handled things badly. Horribly, even. Maybe I should have communicated better or tried harder to work things out instead of just complaining all the time. But I'm not going to pretend I was wrong for wanting to experience life before committing to forever with the first and only guy I ever dated. Silas will probably marry that new girl. They'll have their perfectly predictable life together. The house, the kids, the family barbecues, the whole suburban dream. And good for them. I genuinely hope she never gets restless. I hope she never wonders what else is out there. Because clearly, Silas can't handle being with someone who isn't completely, 100% satisfied with ordinary. As for me, I'm still figuring it out. My hoe phase didn't turn out the way I thought it would. But at least I know now, instead of spending the rest of my life wondering. I'm learning to be alone. Learning who I am when I'm not trying to be what someone else wants me to be. It's harder than I thought it would be. And lonelier than I expected. But it's honest, it's real. Maybe someday I'll meet someone who gets it. Someone who understands that wanting more from life doesn't make you selfish or ungrateful. Someone who can handle my honesty and my complexity instead of expecting me to be sweet and simple and satisfied with whatever scraps of excitement they're willing to offer. Or maybe I won't, and that's okay too. At least I won't spend my life wondering what if. At least I won't look back when I'm 40 and regret all the chances I never took because I was too scared to disappoint people. I know everyone thinks I'm the one who screwed up, that I had something good and threw it away for nothing. But they don't understand. They don't understand what it's like to feel trapped in a life that's supposed to make you happy, but just doesn't. They don't understand what it's like to be 22 and feel like your whole future has already been decided for you. I made my choice. And even though it didn't work out the way I hoped, I'm not sorry for making it. I'm not sorry for being honest about what I wanted, even if it hurt people I cared about. I'm not sorry for choosing uncertainty over suffocation. Sometimes you have to lose everything to figure out who you really are. Sometimes you have to disappoint everyone else to stop disappointing yourself. So, no, I don't regret throwing that ring. I don't regret telling Silas I wanted my hoe phase. I don't regret choosing my truth over his comfort, even if my truth turned out to be messier and more painful than I ever expected. I regret that it had to end the way it did. I regret that we couldn't find a way to grow together instead of apart. I regret that he couldn't understand my need for something more. And I regret that I couldn't find a way to get what I needed without destroying what we had. But I don't regret choosing myself. Even when everyone else thought I was choosing wrong,